Okay, so let's get started at 10:02 here. Good morning, everyone. I'm Beth Cosentino, and I'm with SPAN Parent Advocacy Network. Welcome to the information session, Early Reading, Connecting the Dots for Every Student to Succeed. The webinar today is part of the New Jersey Department of Education's Summer Learning Institute. Please note, as you entered, you probably noted, we are recording and it will be uploaded into the resource folder that I shared. I will share it again and send a follow-up email with it. And it will also be on, the recording will also be on SPAN's NJTSS-Early Reading Project webpage. We'll try to get it up in the near future. We'll definitely have it on our playlist channel by the end of this week. Okay. I'm joined today, my co-presenters, Amanda Carpena and Deborah Lynam. Also, we have two of our NJTSS-CR project team members, Ellen Woodcock and Iju Hamouche. I'm going to drop the resource folder again in the chat. And if anybody is looking for it, just let me know and we'll put it there again. Okay. So let's get started with our agenda and goals. Today, you'll be learning a little bit about the NJDOE's Learning Resource Center Network. I'll share briefly about SPAN Parent Advocacy Network, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about my co-presenters. Next, introducing the New Jersey Literacy Framework by Amanda Carpena, connecting to the NJTSS-ER Framework by Deborah Lynam, and accessing resources for parents and educators. That'll be by me, Beth Cosentino. If you have questions as we go, please drop them in the chat if you would like, or just hold on to them because we will address all questions after we've done the presentation, the three portions of the presentations. We'll have a chance for the questions, okay? And then at the end, there's a evaluation from the DOE, and I will send you the SPAN reflection in the follow-up email. Okay. The reflection for, or the evaluation, excuse me, is the form so that you would get professional development credit, and that is going to be sent out, they said, in a couple of weeks after the Summer Learning Institute completes. Okay. So the Learning Resource Center Network is a free one-stop shop that provides quality instructional materials, technical assistance, professional learning opportunities, and consultation on policies and best practices in special education to families and educators of students with disabilities. All services are offered at no cost to members, and there are two centers in the north, one in the central part of the state and one in the south. The LRC network provides educators, leaders, and families of students with disabilities access to support, services, and professional development. I encourage you to go to their site and review their offerings. We will have a little bit more information about the LRC network at the end after the questions. And again, this is in the PDF of the presentation. So who is SPAN? Since 1987, families in New Jersey and beyond have made SPAN their first stop for support and resources. Today, SPAN's projects and programs for parents of children from birth to age 26 and for women of childbearing age have expanded from a kitchen table to over 40 national, regional, and local programs funded by government agencies, foundations, and fee-for-service contracts. These programs cover education, health and mental health, human services, childcare, and child welfare. Our mission is to empower and support families and inform and involve professionals interested in the healthy development and education of children and youth. SPAN's vision is that all families will have the resources and support they need to ensure that their children become fully participating and contributing members of our communities and society. Our motto is empowered parents, educated, engaged, effective. So here are our three presenters today. Amanda Carpena is a Jersey Can Parent Fellow, focusing her advocacy on literacy and family engagement. She has two children in the Hamilton Township School District one entering kindergarten and the other entering second grade. Next, we have Deborah Lynam, who is a graduate student at Rutgers University working on the NJTSS-Early Reading Initiative. She has 3 children, all of whom receive special education services in their local school district. And then that's me. I'm the project director of the NJTSS-Early Reading Project at SPAN. I have 2 children, and my daughter has an IEP and receives full-out evidence-based reading instruction at school. So we all have firsthand knowledge on how this all works from both as educators and parents. Well, me as a parent. All right, so now Amanda's going to share her screen for her part of the presentation. And as she prepares that, I'm going to stop sharing so she can share. And just give us a moment. All right, looks great, Amanda.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Beth. My name is Amanda Carpena. As Beth mentioned, I'm a Jersey Can Parent Fellow and a previous educator in the New Jersey Public Schools. So now let's dive into the New Jersey Literacy Framework. As an educator, you may be familiar with this document or have at least heard about it. As a parent, your child will benefit from the guidance outlined here in their classroom. So let me start off first by providing everyone with a little bit of background and context. In August 2024, Governor Phil Murphy signed PL Public Law 2024 C52 into law, reinforcing the state's commitment to improving literacy outcomes for students. So today, we will continue to break down what this law will look like for students, educators, and families. To support implementation of this law, the NJDOE, the New Jersey Department of Education, has developed and published guidance which includes a focus on effective evidence-based literacy instruction and universal screening. I'll first focus on learning the framework together before I pass it off to Deborah, where she will connect the dots for us on universal screening. Within the New Jersey Literacy Framework, it is noted that in the coming months, a second document will be released with a heavier focus on defining high quality instructional materials, something we'll sometimes talk about as HQIM. And that will provide guidance for districts on selecting, adopting, and implementing high quality instructional materials, HQIM. Here's a high-level overview of how this legislation and the New Jersey Literacy Framework will establish a comprehensive plan to ensure that young learners benefit from evidence-based literacy instruction by requiring districts to implement the following. Districts will first administer literacy screeners twice a year for students in grades K to 3. They will also provide student support for students consistent with NJTSS and intervention and referral services. They will also notify families within 30 days after the close of the screening period. And additionally, they will report the screening data to the NJDOE. And lastly, districts will provide professional development to staff in grades pre-K to 6. To support implementation, the NJDOE has developed and published this guidance, which includes the following: acceptable and reliable universal screening instruments, high-quality literacy instructional materials, best practices for frequency of screening in students in grades K to 3 and 4 to 12. And lastly, data analysis strategies for high quality literacy instruction and intervention. New Jersey's literacy framework prioritizes instructional methods and strategies for teaching reading and writing that are supported by an extensive body of research and are based on the scientific consensus on the importance of evidence-based literacy instruction. This is highlighted in the National Reading Panel report, Teaching Children to Read, which emphasizes the need for explicit, systematic instruction to help students develop the essential skills required for proficient reading. These principles are incorporated in the latest revisions of the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. Numerous studies indicate that children who struggle with reading by the conclusion of first grade are much less likely to achieve average reading abilities by the end of elementary school, unless they receive meaningful and consistent intervention. However, studies also indicate that with evidence-based instruction, the number of first graders performing below the 30th percentile can be greatly reduced. Research suggests that when skilled educators provide high-quality, evidence-based reading instruction, at least 95% of students can achieve reading proficiency. Whether you are an educator in the room, today or a parent such as myself, we hope the information that we share with you today will resonate and will be relatable to you in your current role. Given the body of research that I've shared and our why for why we are here today as educators and families, it's crucial that all students receive core reading instruction that reinforces cumulative skill development across both word recognition and language comprehension component factors of reading, as illustrated here in Scarborough's reading rope. This model highlights the multifaceted nature of reading, which develops gradually through years of simultaneous instruction and practice across preschool to grade 12. The figure of the reading rope visually represents the numerous interwoven skills required for reading comprehension. Over time, language comprehension becomes increasingly strategic, while word recognition skills become increasingly automatic. As these strands intertwine, students progress towards skilled reading, fluently coordinating word recognition and text comprehension. While we won't be diving deeply into Scarborough's reading rope today, let's pause and consider each aspect of the reading rope to help serve as a foundation for us when we continue our discussion on effective evidence-based literacy instruction. As you see here with the yellow box, word recognition enables readers to identify words in print accurately and automatically, and that includes the following: phonological awareness, decoding, and sight recognition. In the other yellow box, you'll see language comprehension, which provides the oral foundation for readers to integrate and organize information from various linguistic systems to derive meaning from both spoken and written language. Language comprehension components include background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. I'd like to share one more visual model for today, the simple view of reading. Note the equation here. Decoding multiplied by language comprehension equals reading comprehension. To relate this to Scarborough's reading rope, you'll see that each component under word recognition in the rope is represented here in the decoding circle. Then each component from the rope under language comprehension is represented here on the language comprehension circle. The end result is that we all want our children and students to be getting that end result here, reading comprehension. After discussing the research and our why, we've even visited 2 different visual models on reading development. You might be wondering, what does this mean for our students and our children and their needs, and how can we make this all happen in the classroom? So let's connect the dots. Our students need the following: explicit, systematic, and cumulative instruction to become skilled and confident readers. I'm going to give you an example for each bullet point here. Explicit instruction is a structured, evidence-based teaching approach where skills and concepts are taught directly, clearly, and systematically. An example of this in your classroom or something your children might experience in the classroom is when teachers and educators utilize instructional routines with direct explanation and modeling that includes guided practice with immediate and corrective feedback. Now moving on, for when our students require systematic instruction. This is also outlined in our New Jersey Student Learning Standards. These are the essential skills that students must acquire to build a strong literacy foundation. The sequence of instruction from preschool through grade 3 should be designed to facilitate cumulative skill development with clearly defined expectations. The NJSLA articulates learning goals and grade level expectations that support cumulative skill development in key areas such as phonological and phonemic awareness, phonics, word recognition and morphology, reading fluency, vocabulary acquisition and use, and comprehension. These standards clearly outline what students are expected to learn at each grade level, emphasizing the need for foundational skills in early grades to ensure proficient reading with comprehension. Evidence-based, appropriately sequenced instruction begins with phonemic awareness, phonics, and listening and language comprehension skills in preschool, kindergarten, and first grade. As students master these skills, instruction transitions to decoding, word analysis, fluency, and comprehension. So given the research that has been mentioned, it is crucial that all students receive core reading instruction that reinforces cumulative skill development across both word recognition and language comprehension. Think back to that reading rope that I shared earlier, particularly, again, in preschool through 3rd grade, as supported by our New Jersey Student Learning Standards. This approach ensures universal access to a solid early literacy foundation And again, it reduces the number of students needing intensive interventions while supporting long-term reading success for all students. In a few short moments, I'll be passing it over to Deborah to help us connect the dots on how everything I shared relates to universal screening and progress monitoring tools. Effective evidence-based literacy instruction in the classroom should align with the tools that educators are utilizing for universal screening and progress monitoring. These tools are essential for identifying needs and tracking growth. The New Jersey Literacy Framework makes it clear that universal screening plays a crucial role in instructional decision-making, especially within a multi-tiered system of supports, or MTSS. In early reading, an MTSS approach means we're consistently gathering and analyzing data from both formal and informal sources. That data helps us know when and how to adjust instruction, or when to provide targeted interventions to support each student's individual reading growth. This diagram is a visual model of data-informed instruction within an MTSS multi-tiered system of supports. It illustrates how universal screening empowers educators to make proactive, data-informed instructional decisions to improve literacy outcomes. And now I'll pass it off to Deborah to connect the dots for us from evidence-based literacy practices to New Jersey Literacy Framework and universal screening. So I'll stop sharing and pass it to Deborah.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay. Okay, so under the new literacy legislation that Amanda was just describing, schools in New Jersey are now going to be required to administer universal literacy screening twice a year in grades K, kindergarten through third. Districts do have the option to screen a third time during the school year. And in doing so, this would be at the beginning of the year, at the middle of the year, and at the end. And this will really help educators track student progress and determine how well their core reading instruction is working. So information on that is listed in the New Jersey Literacy Framework. For students who are in grades 4 through 12, those who are not yet meeting grade level expectations, screening is also recommended to continue with appropriate grade appropriate tools for that population too. It's critically important that the assessment tools that are being used for this purpose have been specifically designed and validated for screening. So over the past 30 years, research has helped define what to look for in a quality universal screener. And the New Jersey Literacy Framework includes a really helpful tool for districts that are searching for a universal screener. It's called the Universal Literacy Screening Quality Evaluation Worksheet. And it is a tool that you can use in your district to help you select a strong research-based assessment tool. So screening indicators found through research to be predictive of students' reading skill proficiency include the following kind of buckets across the top of this blue row here. So we're looking at screening for letter naming fluency, phonemic awareness, phonics and decoding skills, and oral reading fluency. So these are the skills that are considered to be key early indicators of how well a student is likely to develop good reading proficiency. So in fact, how students perform on these indicators in the early grades, right, kindergarten through third grade, collecting this data through the universal screener can really help us determine who might be in need or who might benefit from some extra reading support right away so that skill gaps in these areas don't develop to be more, comprehensive problems. So let's take a look at this table because this is showing us a sample progression of these sub-skills that should be targeted during our universal screening assessment. Each of these sub-skills has been shown to reliably predict future reading success. So this means if a student is benchmarking on our universal screener in these areas, we can sort of step back and say, okay, this student's trajectory is looking good. But if we were to see some problems in our universal screener in any of these areas, this skill is predictive enough for us to say, let's step in right now and provide some form of support and intervention to try to close this gap so that later on down the road, we don't see these compounding problems start to show up. So let's look at some of these skills, and you will be able to, as I'm talking about each skill, you'll be able to see in what grade level is this type of skill most predictive. And this should tell you, depending on if your child's in one of these grades, is the universal screener that your district or school is using, is it measuring these things? So here we go. Letter naming. So letter naming usually refers to how accurately and quickly students can name letters. It's a quick little measure to see a little bit of insight into naming skills. So how is the student processing information and able to kind of recall information quickly? And letter naming is a great probe to use as it connects to reading, right? Because we know students are going to need to be looking at letters and processing them and then actually reading. So letter naming gives us a really great predictive skill in those early grades. And then under phonemic awareness is our ability to hear, to think about, and to work with individual sounds in words. We call them phonemes. So this should say phonemic awareness here. Phonemic awareness is typically assessed through a measure of phoneme segmentation fluency. And this would be something like a student is given a word and you would ask them to segment all of the sounds out. So what are all of the sounds that you hear in the word cat? And a student would need to produce k, at. So they're hearing a whole word, but they know that there are individual sounds within that word. Phonics and decoding skills are really important because these involve the recognition that there's a connection between those sounds and words and the letters or the letter combinations that are in the printed word, okay? So usually there's a measure that's going to look at how does a student do on recognizing those letter sound connections, and then can they use those letter sound connections to read back and decode a word. And then there's oral reading fluency. This is the ability to read aloud accurately, smoothly, and with expression. And then reading comprehension, there's usually a measure in these tools that's either going to be a retell measure. So the student has read a passage and now you're asking them to tell me what you just read, or a maze activity, which is actually this activity where there are a similar type of passage where there are choices where a student has to fill in the blank for a word. So assuming that they understood what they read, they'd be able to choose the correct words to fill in that cloze activity. So these types of comprehension universal screening tasks, they're not as predictive in the early years. So we tend to see those be a part of universal screening a little bit later in the trajectory, maybe from second grade on, because these other skills, letter naming, phonemic awareness, phonics and decoding, and oral reading fluency, are actually the most predictive for those young students. So now we're going to connect the dots and talk about how to make universal literacy screening truly effective, right? So we have this mandate now in our state that we have to universally screen our students. But to make this process really effective, we know that the whole system, it needs to be kind of a team effort in our schools. So district leadership teams should work together to coordinate a multi-tiered systems of support implementation. And the framework, the literacy framework for our state sort of outlines some of this. And then I'm going to show you some additional resources that have a lot of resources to support a district leadership team in doing this work. So to coordinate an MTSS implementation, this really means that we're aligning our universal screening practices We're using the data that we get from that screening to guide decisions across classrooms and schools. We're allocating resources where that data shows us there's the greatest need, and we're offering professional learning opportunities to help our staff feel confident and supported in doing this database decision-making work. So in New Jersey, developed through a partnership between Rutgers University and the New Jersey Department of Education, we have developed the New Jersey Tiered Systems of Support Early Reading Framework. And this is used to help districts put this universal screening into action. So here you see the New Jersey Tiered System of Supports as a framework for broader supports, okay, not just literacy. This is a framework that's designed to support all students, either academically, behaviorally, socially, emotionally. So it's this idea that there's universal instruction and assessment happening along with additional tiers of intervention and progress monitoring. And the goal of a system like this is that we are going to meet the students' needs through a coordinated system in our school, right? So it's sort of broad. The framework, let's get my Okay, so the framework is built around strong leadership teams, each team member bringing different expertise and playing a unique role in guiding implementation. Supports within the school are aligned to a general belief system and the priorities of our schools and districts. And this is so that we're ensuring a really positive school culture and climate. It's not just about what's happening in schools, it's also about family and community engagement. So we also see that there's a big part for our families, parents, community partners to play in an MTSS model because they're there to help us sustain and strengthen this work over time. So now we're going to be thinking about a multi-tiered system of support in the area of reading. So we're kind of saying like, okay, we're going to put this model in place for an academic purpose, and we want to improve our early reading instruction, right? So in talking about early reading instruction, Tier 1 is going to be where it all starts. This tier provides all students with high quality daily instruction, whole group and small group differentiation. And just as Amanda was describing, this instruction is explicit, it's systematic, and it's cumulative. It's following a clear scope and sequence. This ensures that all foundational reading skills are covered for all students. And importantly, Tier 1 instruction isn't interrupted by any pull-out interventions or other activities going on in our schools. We are wanting every student to get the full benefit of this daily evidence-based reading instruction. And then Tier 2 and Tier 3 are for students who need extra support beyond what's provided in Tier 1. So notice how this extra highlight on the screen here went within Tier 1. So you're seeing that all students are getting Tier 1, and then subsets of our students are getting additional supplemental Tier 2 or Tier 3 supports. So these students are those who are scoring below grade level benchmarks on one of those valid universal screeners that we just talked about. They're going to receive additional instruction targeting specific reading skills based on what that data is telling us about their areas of need. Qualified staff, like trained teachers or reading specialists or certified interventionists, are typically going to be the ones who are delivering this supplemental instruction. And like I said, it happens in addition to their evidence-based Tier 1 reading instruction. The groups are going to be flexible, meaning students can move in and out as their skills continue to develop. So here's how it looks in practice. Tier 2 is usually small group intervention, no more than say 6 students, and maybe they're meeting 3 to 5 times a week, right? So it's decisions being made based on the needs of the students. And then Tier 3 is going to be for those students with the most intensive skill needs. So these groups are going to be even smaller, maybe just one student receiving intervention individually, or maybe up to 3 students. And this instruction is usually happening on a very consistent basis, maybe even daily. So this model in New Jersey builds on our existing intervention and referral services approach. But here we're taking a step towards prevention, right? We're not just waiting for students to be referred because we're seeing a problem and we want to put them into an intervention and referral site situation. What we're doing here is we're actually looking for them. We're using that universal screening process to sort of uncover where there are early signs that the problem may be developing. So we're taking a preventative approach. So this is where we're going to be consciously aligning all of our resources and all of our supports within a school or district to find the students that we need to be looking more closely at. So to do this well, it really is helpful to have like a clear process in mind for how we're going to be using data to make decisions about which students need help when. So the NJTSS-Early Reading Framework, which was developed with support from the U.S. Department of Ed grants, gives our schools in New Jersey a structured way to organize resources, assessments, instruction, and intervention. And when this framework is fully in place, it creates a cycle of continuous improvement, always using student data to drive decisions and to strengthen reading instruction. So it all starts with universal screening. And now we have a mandate in our state to say everybody has to get started. So all of our schools and districts are going to be at this first step. And with support, we can help you get this whole data-informed instructional cycle going. So let's talk a little bit about it, and then I'm going to end by telling you where you can get resources to really start helping you build, first putting the universal screening process in place, but then also getting your whole MTSS framework going. So universal screening, that's our first big step. We're screening all kids, K-3, and in those 4 to 12 grades, we're going to have a system in place to catch those students if they still haven't reached grade level expectations. Whoops. Okay, so screening gives us data that we need to do 2 things. First, that universal screening data that we're collecting on our students is going to be used to help us evaluate whether our core reading instruction, everything that Amanda just described, whether that is actually helping our students meet grade level benchmarks, right? So we're going to have this data and we're going to see how well is our tier 1 instruction performing. We want to see tier 1 instruction actually meeting the needs of at least 80% of our students across the board, because if it's not meeting at least that much, we're really going to be putting stress on this MTSS system because we're going to have too many students that need tier 2 and tier 3 support. So we need strong core reading instruction for all students so that many issues are being resolved because good reading instruction is in place in the first place. That universal screening data, in addition to telling us how healthy is our core instruction, it's also going to help us identify which students need additional intervention supports in order to close skill gaps in those different areas that we talked about earlier, right? Phonemic awareness, phonics, oral reading fluency. At the tier 1 level, we're also going to be using ongoing curriculum embedded assessments to monitor how students are doing in their tier instruction. So if you're receiving or if you're delivering a core reading program, typically those really good research-based programs will have checkpoints built in, right? So teachers will be able to give like an end of lesson quick check or an end of unit or an end of the week assessment that will just give a quick little snapshot on how students are doing in mastering the skills that have been taught. So there's more data in addition to that universal screening data that is helping us know how students are progressing in their instruction. So this type of data is typically used by the teacher, and they're going to use this to do differentiation, to decide how they're going to group students for small group instructional work. Really, really important to know that it's more than just universal screening going on. At the tier 2 level, when we are looking at that universal screening data and we see that there's some type of problem going on in one of those sub-skill areas of literacy, we basically at that point just know that there's an issue. It's like taking your child's temperature, right? You know that they have a fever, so you have this little clue that there's something else going on. You would need more information to figure out what is causing, your child to have a fever. What are the underlying issues? So that's where this idea of you need to give a diagnostic assessment to those students who are not reaching grade level benchmark on your universal screener, because these diagnostic tools are actually going to assess in depth the skills that are required under each of those sub-skill buckets. And the information that you get from this assessment is what's going to be needed to put an intervention plan in place for those students, either at tier 2 or tier 3. Universal screening data alone does not give you this type of data to actually drive the instruction. The diagnostic tool, let's take, for example, if your student did not meet grade level benchmark on a measure of decoding or phonics skills. Let's say you give a nonsense word fluency measure and they don't really have a lot of knowledge built up around letter sound connections, and they definitely are having a difficulty using letter sound connections to decode words. Let's say that's what your universal screener has established. To develop an intervention, you actually need to know what letter sound connections do they know, which ones do they not know, and what word patterns are giving them the most difficulty when they're trying to decode words. So a phonics diagnostic, usually it's like an informal phonics inventory or a spelling inventory, something like that, where you're going to actually see which patterns do the children need support in. You're going to give that, and then that data is going to be analyzed to develop the intervention plans. So once you have that information and the students have been given their the plans have been developed and the students have been given their interventions that are targeting the specific skills that they need, as that intervention is happening, students are also going to have their progress monitored using regular types of assessment tools. So this is going to help us see how well the intervention is working and whether it needs to continue, whether we need to change something in that child's intervention plan, or whether the student is not really responding the way we had hoped. So we definitely need to intensify and take a closer look at things. At this point, when we're at this part of the cycle, this is where in New Jersey we can connect the dots and know that when we have students that are working on intervention plans and we're progress monitoring how they're performing, this is sort of the work that is outlined in our New Jersey Dyslexia Handbook. This is another Department of Education resource that provides additional guidance on using progress monitoring tools and ensuring that interventions are meeting students' needs in relationship to those students who may actually have an underlying reading or learning disability like dyslexia. Okay, so that's sort of the overview of what New Jersey has outlined as a tiered systems of support for early reading. And there are all types of resources and supports available through this partnership with Rutgers University. So to support districts in building strong systems for screening and data analysis and data use, the NJTSS-ER initiative offers professional learning and resources to help with planning, scheduling, and training on the framework and on all the different components that I just walked through. Okay, So the NJTSS-ER website, which you can access by using the QR code on this slide, makes many of the tools and trainings that are out there freely available. So you can go to that website, you can noodle around, check the different tabs for training and the resource library, and you will get a good picture of what's available. But please note that the Department of Ed will also be kind of rolling out in a very systematized way different supports and training opportunities to make different components of this framework easily accessible. So finally, the New Jersey Literacy Framework emphasizes that teacher learning is never a one and done event. There are going to be offerings for ongoing job embedded professional development coming forth. So keep your eye out for those. And I am now going to turn this over to my colleague Beth, and she is going to take us on another journey in connecting the dots.
Thank you, Deborah. And thank you, Amanda. All right, so now we're going to get into a little bit of the resources. So I'm going to do my best to share my screen. Let's see. Hold on one second. Pull up. There we are. All right. Sorry for the delay. Okay, see if I got this now. I'm gonna go here. And then I'll do play from current slide. Okay, so I thought it might be helpful and a little fun to do a check your knowledge. So this is information that you just learned. And we'll go through. If you'd like to drop a T or an F in the chat, you're welcome to, or just note for yourself if you know if the statements are true or false. So starting with the New Jersey Literacy Framework is a guide for implementing evidence-based literacy practices in the 26-27 school year, required by a law signed 5 years ago. Is this true or false? Let's take a look. I think we know that is false. The law was signed last year, 2024, by Governor Murphy, and the requirements for the school districts start this school year, in the 25-26 school year. All right, next we have Scarborough's reading rope has two main components. This is something Amanda spoke about: phonological awareness and background knowledge. True or false? Well, those are part of it, but those aren't the two main components. Word recognition, which phonological awareness falls under, and language comprehension, which background knowledge falls under, lead to reading comprehension or skilled reading. And those are the two main components: word recognition and language comprehension. Right, moving on, we have explicit, systematic, and cumulative instruction is needed for a student to become a skilled and confident reader. True or false? All right, true. These three methods are non-negotiables for all students learning how to read, not just some students, all, okay? So we don't just save these for the people that need intervention. We do this, as Deborah and Amanda both talked about, for all students. Universal screening is a tool used to find out whether students are developing the skills they need to know to be successful readers. True or false? True. It's a preventative measure. Like Deborah talked about, taking the temperature, for intervening early and not waiting to see if things get worse. It's important that we do that intervention early. And that's where the universal screener comes in for everybody. Next one, the NJTSS-ER framework is a multi-tiered approach to address the learning to read needs of only students who can't read. True or false? False. NJTSS-ER's approach that Deborah talked about extensively includes all students by using universal screening and progress monitoring and interventions as needed. And then finally, progress monitoring. is necessary method for understanding the progress a student is making toward the desired outcome. True or false? This is, yes, true. There's no way around it. Data on progress must be kept in order to inform next steps, right? So I don't know how you all did because I can't see the chat, but there is our true or false and your review on what you learned today, or a little bit of what you learned today. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about SPAN's, so SPAN Parent Advocacy Network. I talked about that at the beginning of the session. We are an umbrella organization and we have lots of projects and programs. One of them is the New Jersey Tiered System of Supports for Early Reading Project. And that project sort of is the family engagement piece to what Deborah Lynam was talking about. Deborah was talking about where they do the teacher training piece at Rutgers. So our focus is providing resources, and as you can see, what we're working on here, resources for literacy development, activity pages, one-pagers, tip sheets, and not all of these things are things we've developed. It's things that we've researched and looked for so that it's easily accessible. So you can go onto the site. There's a QR code. Maybe somebody will drop the link into the chat, and you can go in and see that we have them categorized in drop-down menus. So both for educators and parents. We have learning challenges resources, information about dyslexia, developmental language disorder. And then we also have all of our presentation folders and recordings. We've started this project. This project started 2 years ago, or this grant cycle. So last year, Deborah did really thorough breakdown over a series of 3 sessions of what every parent needs to know about early reading. And what she went over kind of briefly here, she really got into and created a scenario and talked about the process for through universal screening and all the way through interventions. So those recordings are on there as well as some other ones. And so I just wanted to show you some visuals. These are examples of some activity pages. We do seasonal ones, and these really are meant to be done with a parent or with an educator. And we have these in multiple languages. We have them in Spanish, French, and Arabic, as well as what you see here, English. And we've like in terms of the beach one, all of the words are on the page. You can do a search and find, and then you can do the search and find for the letters. For the camping one, we have compound word game, and then activity that you don't need the flyer for. It's one of the ones you can do the alphabet kind of game where you say, I'm going on a camping trip and I'm going to take an apple. And then somebody says, I'm going on a camping trip and I'm going to take an apple and a backpack, that one. So those are things that you can do, or you can, suggest to families to do. Engaging their children, not just by sitting and reading books, which is always a great thing that you want to do, but also by having conversations and doing little activities and things that are fun, that aren't just about sitting and reading books, right? We're developing the literacy on all different ways. And then we have a couple of tip sheets that we made. So we have a back to school tip sheet, and these are things to remember. And these are meant for parents, but for educators, you might want to look to see, some of these things that you can be prepared for and think about going into back to school night, or just even, the very beginning of the year, start to give this information. And then we had a presentation on parent-teacher conferences, and there's a flyer for that about what to do before, during, and after. So all of these things are on our webpage, like I said, and they're downloadable, or you can share them as PDFs, and the links then are easily to access and click on. So let's see. All right, so do we have any questions for anyone? I don't know, let's see. Any questions come up? I'm looking in the chat. I see people play the true false game. Oh, thanks.
I have a question, Beth, for our participants today, our audience. I'm curious if you wouldn't mind using the chat to let us know, were you familiar with the New Jersey literacy framework? Has it crossed your desk already? Have you read it? Was it new today? Were you learning about it for the first time? So Amy was not familiar. Melissa was. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I love that. Someone said it's already in their binder.
I saw that. Yep, some familiar.
Good, good.
Right.
I think just as I was asking that question, I saw, oh, let me see.
Yes, somebody
Do we
asked.
know if the NJ student SLA scores are available yet? I do not know. Beth, do you?
I'm thinking about when I get my children's scores in the mail, and they're usually, I want to say in November, October or November. So I don't know if the districts have them, but the parents, I don't usually get them and there's a time frame that they have to send them out, but it's usually in the fall that we get them. And then they do a report out, usually in a Board of Ed meeting as well, to share that information. Has there been any guidance released on how school districts will be reporting data to the state? I'm not familiar. Deborah or
I
Amanda,
don't, yeah, I can't, I can,
I'm going to copy that question.
I would have to ask someone else that question to know for
Yeah.
sure. But when it does go out, I'm sure that it'll be going out through a broadcast. So yeah,
Yes.
sorry, Jordan, I don't have an answer to that question right now.
So if you don't know where to go to the broadcast, if you put in NJDOE broadcast 2025, do a Google search, then you'll find it and just bookmark it. And so then every Wednesday they are posted and you can find that information there. Let's see if there's anything else. I did change the access. I'm sorry, some of the flyers weren't accessible. I didn't realize. So they should be all, but just shoot me an email if anything is. I'll double check. And I will send a follow up. So let me just go into you need to do this QR code. So let me go to the next. Here we go. So let me drop this link in the chat too. If nobody else has, let me see. We have the link for this so that you can fill it out for your professional development. Sorry, I put it at the top. Here we go. All right, so there's a link to the evaluation on today's topic. I just put it in the chat. And they said the certificates will be issued approximately 2 weeks after the Summer Learning Institute is completed, which I think this is the last week. It was 2 weeks. So sometime, I guess, maybe beginning of August, mid-August. Okay. And then this is, again, thank you for coming. And this is, again, information on the Learning Resource Center. So this is in the PDF. So if you want to take a look at that and then follow the DOE on Eventbrite. And I will share on our webpage, you will see where you can follow us as well. And in a follow-up email, I'll send a reflection form that I would be so grateful for you to fill out for our own grant purposes. And this is the Department of Education, the Office of Special Education. And thank you from us. We really appreciate you all coming today. And have a great rest of your summer. And keep an eye on the broadcast, like Deborah said, because that's where they'll be sharing announcements. Thank you. All right. I'm going to stop the recording.